Hi, beautiful soul. In this video, I want to talk about why triggers are a good thing and how they can actually help us. So, what are triggers, firstly, and how can they manifest? So, triggers can manifest in a number of ways in our body. So, they can cause physical reactions like a racing heart, feeling your heartbeat in your ears, things like that, rapid breathing or breath holding. Feeling nauseous or having kind of that not feeling in your stomach, and also things like shaking hands, and feeling a sudden muscle tension in our bodies. I have it particularly in my shoulders, but it can just be any kind of tensing up. Triggers can also manifest as emotional responses. So this can be things like sudden feelings of anger, rage, sadness, things like anxiety, feelings that are basically overwhelming. And when I was a teenager, I would definitely resonate with more of the anger, rage, things like that. It was like this overwhelming rage that couldn't be contained, and it would just explode through me via yelling or screaming, just completely wild behavior. And once it had been expressed, it was like that trigger completely dissipated altogether. And I just had no control over these emotional responses, and they did feel kind of good in the moment. That expression did feel good. However, it never felt good afterwards. It was kind of embarrassing behavior that, I did want to change. And so, being a teenager, I didn't really know what to do about this. I wasn't really that conscious of it. And so I really got into martial arts, specifically Muay Thai. And my family were super supportive of this. And I would go to training and express my anger and rage in a completely safe and disciplined way, like not to hurt anyone, just to have physical exercise and kick and punch things. And, it felt really good to do that, to channel some of that emotion outwards. But it also didn't really heal the underlying reasons for my anger and rage, and it wasn't always effective in stopping it. It kind of just helped lessen it, I would say. So other emotional responses when it comes to triggers include feeling defensive or withdrawing from situations. Also, things like intense fear and panic without a reason. And this is also something I've experienced a lot of most of my adult life, having suffered with things like anxiety, where the physical reaction wouldn't be necessarily proportional to kind of what was happening. And so that's how I knew that these feelings of being in danger didn't really make sense because the thing that was causing me to feel that way wasn't doing it to other people, sort of thing. So yeah, that's kind of emotional ways that it can happen. It can also manifest through thought patterns. So things like self-doubt, things like feelings of inadequacy or low self-worth, catastrophizing, like assuming the worst is always going to happen, or, good things can't happen to me. I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop, that sort of thinking. That's like really unhelpful, and it's not actually accurate. Like, even statistically speaking, things can't, don't and can't, um, yeah, go wrong all the time, 100% of the time. That just doesn't make any sense. So, those are some of the things that can indicate it's a trigger. Behavioral changes can also highlight triggers, like avoiding certain people or situations, overreacting to things, feeling the urge to lash out or shut down. We've already talked about those. And triggers often stem from past experiences, and for me, they always stem from something in the past. Typically, for me, it's been childhood experiences. And that kind of childhood experience, when we go out into the world, we're accumulating based off that foundation. And so I think recognizing when we're being triggered, how triggers manifest, that's kind of the first step. So when a trigger is a good thing, so emotional triggers can be really valuable when we're approaching them with awareness. And although they feel overwhelming, they are pointing straight to our unresolved wounds, our unmet needs, our areas for personal growth. And so that's why they're beneficial at the end of the day. So they're highlighting emotional pain that hasn't been fully processed. And instead of ignoring them, it's important to recognize that a trigger can kind of help you trace it back to its root cause. And whether that's trauma, rejection, or a limiting belief, it is a signal to point back there. So for me, this type of thing has manifested in ways of the feelings of inadequacy, the insecurity, not trusting situations, like when is the other shoe going to drop, that kind of stuff. It all pointed back to childhood wounding. And a lot of times it was like abandonment fears. There was like rejection fears there too, lack of self-worth. Like all of this came from my childhood, and then it would manifest itself in relationships or situations. So I've experienced both avoidant and anxious attachment style issues in relationships specifically. So I would categorize myself as someone who had a disorganized attachment style. And so in relationships, the minute that I liked someone, really, this fear response would happen. I'd completely shut down. My behavior would be the opposite of what I wanted. So if I really liked someone, I would just push them away or kick them out of my apartment or whatever, just get them away because that felt really uncomfortable. And that was all about childhood stuff that needed healing. And so going back and doing that work definitely has improved my attachment style issues. Like I would be categorized in the secure attachment category now to my awareness. So that's really good. So they offer an opportunity for healing. And so once you identify the underlying issue, then you can actually do the work. And that for me has involved therapy with a psychologist, inner child work, a lot of self-reflection and journaling, just doing my own research and like following content creators that share things and share their perspectives, accumulating as much information as possible to kind of work through these things. I've done more esoteric, spiritual type practices as well. I've worked with the astrology or, shadow work, things like this. And I found that using all of the resources and tools that are available has really helped work through and heal those things. So they can also strengthen our emotional resilience. So instead of reacting impulsively, we're building emotional strength instead of letting ourselves be controlled by fear or triggers or whatever. We're actually gaining the ability to pause, to reflect, to respond intentionally. And that also isn't just something that benefits us, it's reducing the pain that we create around us and helping to create more harmonious and healthy relationships. They also guide us towards boundaries and self-respect. So although it's good to identify triggers and take that accountability and responsibility onto ourselves, if we're noticing that there are people around us that just keep triggering our wounds repeatedly, that's actually a sign that we need to set a boundary with those people or that person. So it's just about recognizing this situation or this person that continually triggers me. it's not serving my well-being, it's not serving my highest good. And for me to make the healthiest choice for myself, I need to remove myself from that person or that situation and put that boundary in place. And so at the end of the day, all of this work is fueling our personal transformations. It's a motivation for change. It's healing our wounds. It's changing our perspective. It's developing new coping strategies and basically pushing us towards a more empowered, fulfilled version of ourselves that's showing up in the world in the way that we want. And so instead of feeling like triggers are something to be scared of or avoided, really leaning into them and working with them can be super powerful. So how do we use our triggers? So it's really important to ensure that our triggers are not actually projecting out and hurting anyone. So the first thing is to make sure that these emotional and behavioral responses have been worked through enough to not project out to others, and we're able to catch ourselves in the trigger. So the first step is to pause and observe. So stop, take a breath, don't react. And it's just about breathing, identifying where you're at. Like, what emotional state am I in? What am I feeling? What's the emotion? Is it anger, disappointment, sadness, fear, frustration? Like, what is it? And also identifying what behavior or what thing triggered it or caused it. And so I generally trace it back, and I do this work in terms of identifying okay, where am I at? What caused it? What might be the reason for this? So I usually do this if I can, while it's fresh, I ponder it. So I can recall this situation where I was triggered by a friend who sent me this text message and cancelling on something that she had agreed to do for me. And we're no longer in contact for my well-being. I had to put a boundary up. But at the time, I was by myself waiting for my flight at an airport. And so I got my phone out and started making notes about it. Like, what was it that triggered me? Why did her behavior trigger me? Where did it stem from? What childhood experience did it remind me of? And I was able to identify at the time that it stemmed from being let down by people, particularly family. This is just something I've dealt with my whole life. Being let down, not feeling like I could rely on anyone, it did kind of bring up that fear of okay, it's no wonder that I'm a hyper independent woman who actually has just done my own thing and only relied on myself and not actually let myself rely on other people because I always got let down. So that sort of feeling. However, by this point when I was doing this work, it wasn't the case anymore. I had kind of healed through a lot of that. And so I identified kind of all of that background stuff. And then when I saw her next, we talked about it, why she let me down. And at the time that it had happened, she had told me a reasoning. But then when we talked about it later, she had admitted that she had actually lied about the reason because she was worried about how I would perceive her. And the worst thing about this whole thing was actually that I perceived the lie as way worse when it came to having a character flaw than the actual reason. And the actual reason was she was experiencing a lot of anxiety at the time. She didn't feel safe, leaving the house to go and do this thing for me that she agreed to do. And if I had received that at the time, I don't think I would have felt triggered at all. That authentic truth would have made me feel caring and understanding, and we would have talked about alternatives. And instead, her lie made me feel like I wasn't a priority, like she didn't value me or my time, or me as a friend. It just made me feel terrible, and it really hurt. And so I guess that's the message as well. Sometimes being authentic is the safest way to approach a situation. Like sometimes the lie actually causes way more harm than telling the authentic truth and just like coming from that place of, you know, authenticity. So next I would choose how to respond. So instead of reacting impulsively, it's really important to decide, like, how am I going to respond to this trigger? So usually I don't get into things with people who aren't self-aware. I don't get into things if I'm feeling any kind of emotion. Like I'll go process that and then come back to responding to that person when I feel stable in my emotions. And sometimes depending on the person, it is a conversation of, when you did this, I felt really triggered because of this reason. I have childhood wounding around that. So, you know, if someone genuinely cares about you, like I know triggers are our own responsibility, but if someone genuinely loves you and cares about you, they're going to try and change their behavior to help you, to not trigger you as much. And we still have a responsibility to work on these triggers ourselves. Like we have to go to therapy, we have to sort things out because it's just never going to go away without that work. But I'm so grateful that I've been able to create emotional safety in all of my relationships now, like my family relationships, my friendships, where I can talk about these things and there is honesty and authenticity and a genuine desire for everyone to work together harmoniously, to interact harmoniously. And if that means I have to change my behavior because it was triggering someone, I will absolutely do that for the people that I love, and they do it for me, and it's just beautiful. And if someone can't show up in that way, like I've just kind of let them go, because I want good relationships. I want to feel safe and secure in my relationships 100%. So that's just a boundary that I have, and I can totally appreciate and acknowledge that not everyone's going to be able to do that. Sometimes it's just not possible to do that, but I've just found that it just feels nice and I like it, and that's what I've done. So it's really important to regain control over our emotions instead of letting them control us. And then finally, we need to like reflect and learn. So I'll journal typically on my deeper thoughts about the trigger. What can the trigger reveal about my wounds or needs? I'll consider like, what can I do to heal this long term? I mentioned some things before, like, you know, therapy. And typically for me, that actually is working with my psychologist on a regular basis. I'm so proactive. And I have an amazing, wonderful psychologist that I can be my total authentic self with. And I know that's not available to everyone. So I think friends and family can help in this space as well. But I just think it really depends on which friends or family. So we need to be really discerning about what advice are we taking from people. Because at the end of the day, even though people are our friends and family, they might not have good intentions for us at the end of the day. They might be selfish. They might want a certain thing for us to keep us at a certain level because that benefits them. Or they might not be very self-aware or evolved themselves. And so their advice just might not be what you need for your highest good, for your personal growth. And so it's imperative to be very selective about this. At the end of the day, usually we are the only ones that can answer things for ourselves, and only we know what's truly right for us and what we really want. And so that's just something to be mindful of as well. So I just wanted to put this out there that triggers aren't something to be like feared or avoided. They can help shed light on things for us that still need work and healing, and can help us grow into better versions of ourselves. So I hope this helps someone. I love you. Bye.